The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the quiet of a world at peace, nor the hush of a distant battlefield awaiting its first shot. This was deeper, heavier, a silence that devoured even the memory of sound. The kind of silence that pressed into the skull and left you uncertain whether you were deaf or dreaming. Our lander descended through the ash-choked atmosphere with only the muted hum of the engines for company. Even that seemed wrong. Hollow. Like the craft itself feared to make too much noise. My men sat across from me, their expressions hidden behind their rebreather masks, though their body language was tense, hands white-knuckled on their weapons. Varelia Prime, a name that had meant nothing to me before this deployment, just another forgotten world among millions. Imperial records described it as a standard hive planet. Billions of souls packed into decaying spires, their toil feeding the greater war machine of the Imperium. The report from Fleet Command had been vague. Vox silence across the planet. No response from the local PDF or administratum. No sign of rebellion, Xenos incursion or warp storms. Just nothing. Which meant something had gone very, very wrong. 2 minutes, barked Sergeant Hale. His voice filtered through the Vox grill of his helmet. Even through the distortion I caught the strain beneath his professional tone. Weapons check. The squad responded in perfect unison, bolters clacking and las carbines humming as each man ran through the ritual of readiness. I followed suit, the motions automatic after decades of service. My rifle felt heavier than usual, as though the planet itself were trying to pull it from my grip. Through the narrow viewport, I saw the surface for the first time. The hive sprawled below like a corpse sprawled across a battlefield. Its towering spires were intact, unscarred by bombardment or siege, yet utterly still. No lights burned in its windows. No smoke rose from its manufactoria. Streets that should have swarmed with millions of citizens were empty. The ash was everywhere, a pale grey-brown snow that coated every surface and swirled lazily through the air. It had no source. No fires burned. No volcanoes erupted. Yet the ash fell endlessly, whispering as it settled. The lander touched down with a jarring thud. The rear ramp hissed open, letting in a gust of air so cold it cut through my armor. I stepped out first, boots sinking slightly into the thick layer of ash. It came up past my ankles, clinging to the plating like damp grave soil. The silence deepened. Even the engines behind me faded to nothing, though I could see their exhaust burning bright. My own breathing was the only sound, amplified unnaturally loud inside my helmet. "Report," I ordered, forcing strength into my voice. "Perimeter clear," Hale replied. "No movement, no contacts, no anything," muttered Private Wren. His voice trembled before Hale silenced him with a sharp gesture. I scanned the horizon, every instinct screaming that something watched us. But there was nothing. No distant figures, no signs of life at all. We moved out in formation, rifles sweeping the streets. The ash muffled our footsteps, leaving our movements eerily weightless. Buildings loomed on either side, perfectly preserved yet lifeless. An administratum hall stood with its great banners unfurled, the aquila stitched in gold thread that should have been faded or torn after years of exposure. Instead they looked freshly hung, as though their caretakers had vanished mere seconds before our arrival. We found our first body in the plaza at the heart of the landing zone. At first I thought it was a statue. The figure knelt mid-prayer, hands clasped, head bowed. Its robes were stiff with frost, its skin pale as marble beneath a thin coating of ash. But when I reached out, a single touch sent it collapsing into dust, leaving nothing behind but a faint outline on the ground. Wren swore softly. Hale barked at him to hold his tongue, but I couldn't blame him. The image was burned into my mind, a life reduced to ash and silence. We advanced deeper into the hive. More figures appeared, frozen mid-motion, caught in acts of worship, work or panic. Some ran, others fought invisible foes, mouths open in silent screams. None of them made a sound, even when disturbed. When struck they simply crumbled, the ash joining the endless layers beneath our feet. Captain Rethan's voice came over the Vox, calm but tinged with mechanical static. The tech priest walked beside me, his augmentic limbs moving with inhuman precision. "I am detecting inconsistencies." "Define inconsistencies," I snapped. "The environmental readings suggest these bodies have been here for centuries," he said, tilting his head unnaturally. "But their clothing, their tools, even the very buildings around us, there is no sign of decay." I swallowed hard. Could it be a stasis effect? "Negative," Rethan replied. This is not stasis. This is absence. As though time itself has been selectively edited. Before I could respond, my vox crackled. At first I thought it was static. Then beneath the distortion, a single word emerged. A whisper so faint it seemed to come from inside my own skull. Witness. Say again, I barked, spinning in place. Who transmitted that? The squad froze. Weapons ready. No one answered. It came from you, Hale said slowly, his visor turning toward me. Captain, it came from your channel. That's impossible. I snapped, checking my systems. My channel was locked, encrypted, completely secure. Retha, the tech priest's mechadendrites twitched in agitation, confirming the signal originated from within our network, but no external sources present. The whisper came again, louder this time. Witness. Ren backed away, his weapon shaking. Throne, save us. What is that? Former, I ordered, forcing my fear down. We move. Now. As we marched deeper into the hive, the ash grew thicker. It clung to our armor like a living thing, seeping into every seam and crevice. The frozen figures became more numerous, forming perfect lines along the street. They faced inward, toward the city's core, as though all had been drawn to the same destination. The squad began to murmur prayers, their voices trembling. The silence swallowed even those sacred words, leaving only the mechanical rasp of their respiration. Then we turned a corner, and the world fell away. The heart of the hive lay before us, a vast open crater, filled with spiraling patterns etched into the earth. Each line was perfectly precise, stretching for kilometers, visible even through the layers of ash. The spirals overlapped and intertwined, forming a labyrinth so complex my mind ached to follow it. This isn't natural, Rethan murmured, his mechadendrites clicking. This was carved. By what? Hale demanded. Rethan turned toward me, his mechanical eyes glowing faintly green. By them, he said, gesturing to the ash-coated figures, lining the crater's edge. As I stared, I realized he was right. The patterns weren't the work of machines or tools. They were shaped by human hands. Thousands, maybe millions of them, moving in perfect unison. The whisper came one final time, louder now, undeniable. Witness. And in that moment, I understood with absolute certainty that whatever had silenced this world wasn't gone. It was waiting. We stood at the crater's edge, staring into that spiraling abyss. As the silence pressed tighter around us, it felt physical now, like a hand closing around my throat. My squad shifted uneasily behind me, boots crunching in the ash. The only sound left in this forsaken place. Captain, Hale said quietly, his visor angled down toward the patterns below. What are your orders? My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The spirals seemed to draw the words from me, swallowing my voice before it left my throat. I forced myself to turn away, breaking the We move out, I managed, my voice hoarse. We find the source of that transmission. No one argued. We fell back into formation, and headed deeper into the hive, skirting the crater's edge. The frozen figures were thicker here, standing shoulder to shoulder, all facing inward, as though paying silent homage to the spirals. Some were kneeling, some prone, others locked mid-stride. A few were clutching weapons, but their poses were wrong, too precise, too deliberate, like pieces arranged on a board by an unseen hand. Permission to speak freely, sir, Ren muttered, keeping his rifle tight to his chest. Granted, I said, though my jaw was tight. This isn't right, he said, his voice trembling. This isn't a battlefield. It's a state, like they were placed here to make us see. Enough, Hale snapped. Focus on your sector, Private. Ren fell silent, but I couldn't shake his words. A stage, yes, that was exactly what it felt like. Rethan walked at my side, his mechadendrites twitching as they scanned the environment. Captain, he said, his voice calm, though the edge of distortion made it sound unnatural. I have been analyzing the initial transmission, and, there is no external source, he said. The signal originated from within our own Vox network. I frowned. Feedback. Negative. This was not a malfunction. The pattern of the transmission suggests deliberate construction. It is recursive, meaning, he tilted his head, the motion insect-like, meaning it built itself from our own voices. My stomach turned. So whatever we heard was not a voice as you understand it, Rethan finished, merely the pattern of one. Before I could respond, static hissed across the Vox channel. It was faint at first, then sharpened into clarity, a voice speaking in perfect calm. Witness. The sound froze us in place. My hands clenched around my rifle. That came from my comm, Ren said, his voice high and strained. I swear it was my voice. No, another soldier, Carol said. It was mine. You're both wrong, Hale growled. It was his. He pointed at me. I checked my Vox display, but it showed nothing. No source, no record of transmission. Magos, I snapped. Pinpoint the origin. Rethan's mechadendrites lashed out, plugging into the nearest wall console. His Binharik cant was rapid, stuttering, almost frantic. Finally, he looked up, his glowing eyes flickering. Impossible. The signal is everywhere. Every speaker, every channel, every unit. It is the hive itself. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. Explain. He hesitated, and that hesitation chilled me more than his words. The infrastructure here is intact. The Vox arrays, the data relays, the entire network. But there are no operators, no one sending commands. The hive has absorbed its inhabitants. Their voices are its voice. As if to punctuate his words, the Vox crackled again. This time, multiple voices overlapped, whispering fragments of prayers, orders and pleas for help. My own voice was among them, whispering commands I had never given. Move, I barked. We need to get higher ground. We pushed forward, climbing through the hive's skeletal streets, toward one of the central spires. The climb was grueling, the ash deepening as we ascended, clinging to our armor, and seeping into every seam. The silence was no longer empty. It felt crowded, as though countless unseen presences moved just beyond our perception. At last, we reached a broken hab level near the spire's midpoint. Doors stood ajar, lights still burning. A meal sat half-eaten on a table, steam curling from a cup of recaf, as though its owner had just stepped away. Saints preserve us, Wren whispered. They're gone, just gone. Search every room, Hale ordered. Report anything unusual. The squad spread out. I moved with Rethan toward a central chamber that had once been a chapel. Its walls were lined with imperial iconography, the aquila, carved deep into the stone. But the altar at the room's center was wrong. Instead of candles and relics, it was covered in spirals etched into the surface, each line razor-sharp and perfectly symmetrical. Rethan leaned closer, scanning the carvings. This is not Mechanicus work, he said, nor is it human. What does it mean? Meaning is irrelevant, he replied. Function is paramount. These lines are not art, they are circuitry. A chill ran down my spine. For what purpose? Before he could answer, a scream cut through the Vox. Not a battle cry, or a death wail, a soundless scream, pure and perfect, the kind that bypassed the ears and went straight to the soul. We bolted from the chapel. Wren was gone. His weapon lay on the floor, still warm. A faint spiral pattern burned into the metal of its stock. His helmet rested beside it. Vox unit crackling soft. Hale picked it up, his hands trembling. Wren, report, the helmet speaker hissed, then whispered a single word in Wren's own voice. Witness. We stood frozen, staring at the helmet as the whisper repeated again and again, faster each time, overlapping until it became a droning chant. Rethan's voice was a low rasp. Captain, look. The floor beneath the helmet was shifting. The ash was drawing inward, forming concentric spirals around our boots. The frozen figures outside the hab were no longer still. They stood in perfect rows, their heads turning in unison toward us. Form up, I roared. We're leaving. Now. The squad scrambled into formation, backing toward the spire's central staircase. My heart pounded as the Vox in my helmet whispered, Wren's voice directly into my ear, so close it felt like breath on my neck. Witness. We fled into the darkness, but the word followed us, echoing from every channel, every wall, every heartbeat. By the time we reached the staircase, I no longer knew if the whispers were coming from the hive or from inside my own mind. We descended the staircase two at a time, boots thudding against the cold metal steps, though even that sound seemed thin and unnatural, swallowed by the oppressive silence around us. My chest felt tight, like the air itself was resisting our presence, trying to smother us. Wren's absence hung over us like a shadow. No one spoke his name, no one needed to. The only sound was the whisper, still faint in my Vox. Witness. It didn't fade with distance. It didn't change no matter how many corridors we put between ourselves and that cursed chamber. It stayed with me, like my own thoughts turned traitor. We emerged into a wide transit hall lined with skeletal transit pods and rusted rail lines. The ash here was deeper, nearly to our knees. The frozen figures were arranged in rows on either side, standing like silent honor guard. Their mouths hung open, as though mid-chant, but no sound escaped them. Rethan paused, his mechadendrites twitching. "Captain," he said, his voice metallic and low, "I am registering an anomaly. I didn't have the patience for riddles. Explain. The environment is shifting." His head rotated an impossible 90 degrees as he scanned the hall. "Spatial markers I set earlier are no longer where they should be. These walls, they have moved." Hale turned sharply. "The walls move." "Not in a literal physical sense," Rethan corrected, though even he sounded uncertain. "It is as if the corridors themselves are reconfiguring, subtly folding in on themselves, a perfect maze." My stomach churned, like the spiral. "Yes," he said, a note of reverence in his tone, "exactly like the spirals." I opened my Vox channel to Fleet Command, desperate for a stable voice amid this madness. Static answered me, then faint and clear, my own voice, repeating, "All units advance, secure the core, witness." I froze, my throat went dry. "That's not me." Rethan tilted his head. "It may not matter. The Hive's network is reflecting you now. There is no distinction between signal and sender." Hale gripped his weapon tight. "We need to get out of here before." He stopped staring past me. I turned to follow his gaze and felt my blood run cold. The luminous paint marks we'd left earlier to track our route were gone. I knelt, brushing the ash with my gaunt. There was no trace of our earlier markings, not even scuffs from our boots. The ground was perfectly smooth, pristine, like we had never passed this way. "Impossible," Carol muttered. I saw Hale put those marks down myself. "They were here," Hale said through clenched teeth. "I know they were here." Rethan's mechadendrites snaked along the wall, scanning furiously. "The environment is resetting itself," he said, almost in awe. "Not erasing our markings, Captain. Rearranging them, repurposing them." "Repurposing?" I snapped. "For what?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because as I followed the line of the wall upward, I saw the answer for myself. The marks hadn't been erased. They'd been moved, pulled into perfect curves and lines, forming a spiral etched into the ash and metal. The same pattern we'd seen at the crater's heart. "Backtrack," I ordered. "Now, we retrace every step." We turned as one, and moved quickly, weapons raised. The ash swirled unnaturally around us, forming eddies that tugged at our boot. The frozen figures were more numerous now, standing closer together, their heads tilted just slightly, as if watching. Ren's disappearance hung heavier with each step. Every shadow seemed to hide another threat, every corner a trap waiting to spring. We reached the junction where we'd split earlier, and stopped cold. The path behind us was gone, not blocked, not destroyed, gone. In its place was a solid wall of seamless metal, as though no corridor had ever existed there. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something far older, like incense left burning in a sealed crypt. "Saints protect us," Carol whispered, backing away. It's not possible. Nothing about this is possible." I snarled, forcing down my own rising panic. "Find another way." Hale moved to scout a side corridor, only to stop abruptly. "Captain," he said, his voice trembling, "you need to see this." I joined him, and felt the breath leave my body. The corridor ahead stretched on endlessly. It wasn't just long, it was wrong. The walls seemed to bend inward, converging in a perspective that shifted as I stared at it. The ash on the floor formed looping patterns that pulsed faintly, almost like breathing, and far down the passage, at the very edge of sight, a single figure stood. It was, or at least it looked like Ren. His armor was intact, his posture familiar, but he didn't move, didn't breathe. He simply stood, with his head bowed, facing away from us. "Ren," Hale shouted, raising his rifle. "Sound off, soldier." The figure didn't respond. Carol joined in, desperation creeping into his voice. "It's us. We're here to bring you home." Slowly, agonizingly, the figure raised its head, not fully, just enough that I could see its visor glint in the dim light. "Don't," I hissed, "don't go near him." But Hale was already moving, boots sinking deep into the ash as he advanced. "We can't leave him, Captain. You know the code. We never leave a man behind." "Hale," I barked, but my voice sounded distant, swallowed by the silence. The figure turned fully, and every light in the corridor flickered. It wasn't Ren. The armor was right, the silhouette perfect, but its proportions were subtly wrong, too elongated in some places, too compressed in others, and where the visor should have been, black glass, there was only smooth, unbroken flesh. The thing tilted its head at Hale in a grotesque imitation of curiosity. "Open fire," I roared. The corridor erupted in gunfire, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. The creature didn't move at first, absorbing the rounds with no visible effect. Then, without warning, It vanished, gone between one heartbeat and the next. Where is it? Carol shouted, spinning wildly. Where the throne did it go? I scanned the darkness. Adrenaline surged. Hold formation, watch your sectors. Then the vox in my ear crackled to life. Ren's voice soft and broken. Why did you leave me, Captain? My hands shook. That's not him, I whispered. It's not him. The whisper rose, layering over itself until it became a witness, witness, witness. The ash surged upward, coalescing into new spiral patterns around our boots. The walls began to move, shifting with a sound like distant grinding machinery. The corridor bent impossibly, folding in on itself like Rythan's mechanical voice cut through the chaos. Captain, the hive is restructuring. It is guiding us inward. Fall back, I ordered. Anywhere but forward. Move. But there was no longer any backward to flee to. Behind us, the wall had shifted again, sealing us inside. The only path left was toward the spirals, toward the thing, wearing Ren's voice. As the patterns glowed brighter, I realized with growing horror that the hive wasn't trapping us out of malice. It was preparing us for something far worse. The walls groaned around us as they shifted, the sound so deep it vibrated through my bones. Metal plates slid seamlessly into new configurations, closing paths we had come from, and opening others without warning. The ash rose in swirling spirals, lifting off the floor like a living fire. My men huddled closer, weapons raised, their breathing ragged in my vox. This isn't a hive, Hale muttered, his voice trembling, despite his efforts to sound calm. It's a labyrinth. No, Ryson corrected, his mechanical tone disturbingly calm. A labyrinth is built for escape. This is built to lead. Lead where? Carol asked, his voice sharp, bordering on hysteria. Ryson's glowing eyes turned to me. Inward, always inward. The words chilled me more than the silence. Always in. That was exactly where we were being funneled, deeper and deeper toward the hive's heart, and I didn't have a choice. With every path behind us sealed, forward was the only direction left. Keep moving, I ordered, forcing authority into my tone, eyes sharp. Stay. As we advanced, I tried to open a vox channel to the fleet again. Static answered me, thick and broken, but beneath it, faint and chilling, I heard my own voice, clear, precise. All units advance. Secure the core. Maintain formation. I froze mid-step. The others halted as well, turning their visors toward me. That wasn't you just now, was it, Captain? Hale asked carefully. I shook my head. No, that was something else. The voice repeated, louder this time, echoing through every helmet. It wasn't distorted. It was perfect, down to the cadence of my breathing. Advance. Secure the core. Witness. My men shifted uneasily. Carol backed up a step. Sir, how does it know your voice? Ryson's mechadendrites clicked nervously. The hive is listening. Every word you've spoken, every order you've given, it has recorded them, repurposed them. It speaks with your authority, because it has no voice of its own. It's trying to command us. I realized, my stomach turning. Yes, Ryson said simply, and it is succeeding. The next corridor opened into a vast chamber, filled with Imperial machinery. At first, relief surged through me, signs of human industry at last. But the feeling curdled as I looked closer. The servitors lining the walls were still moving, but their actions were meaningless. Some polished the same patch of floor over and over. Others kneeled and rose in mechanical rhythm, as though worshipping an invisible altar. None of them responded when I shouted. Hale approached one cautiously, his rifle ready. These models are centuries out of date, he said. How are they still running? They shouldn't be, Ryson said flatly. There is no external power here. Their function persists, because the hive wills it. Carol shuddered. They look wrong, sir. He wasn't exaggerating. The servitors' augmentics were mismatched. Their flesh, pale and stretched unnaturally. Some of their limbs bent in ways no human anatomy allowed. Others had faces too perfect, like masks, sculpted by someone who had never seen a living being. I forced myself closer to one, studying its features. Its eyes were glassy, but there was an unmistakable awareness behind them, like something watching me through a window. A faint movement drew my gaze to its lips. They were moving, forming words with no sound. What's it saying? I asked Rice. He scanned it, his Ben Herrick speech rattling like static. The mouth forms your name, Captain. I stumbled back. Pull it offline. Hale didn't hesitate. He fired a single shot into the servitor's skull. It collapsed without a sound. Ash spilled from the wound,
swirling upward before settling into a small, perfect spiral on the floor. "That's not right," Carol whispered. "That's not blood." Before I could respond, the remaining servitors all turned their heads in unison to face the chamber, filled with a soundless scream. My Vox units surged with interference, but the scream wasn't audio. It was inside our minds, bypassing our ears entirely. Several men staggered, clutching their helmet. Hail fired into the nearest servitor, blasting it apart, but the others didn't move to defend themselves. They simply watched us, their blank faces unreadable. Then one spoke, not with its own voice, but with mine. "Advance, secure the core." The words rolled through the chamber, too perfect, too familiar. The tone was calm, commanding, utterly authoritative. My men froze, for a heartbeat. Even I nearly obeyed. "That's not me," I shouted. "Ignore it. That's not me." Another servitor spoke, this one using Hale's voice. "Clear the sector. Sweep for survivors." Then Carol's voice. "Witness, witness, witness." My men began to panic. "Sir, how do we know which orders are real?" one soldier demanded. What if we're already following its orders?" "Hold the line," I roared, my voice raw. "You take orders from me and me alone, no one else." But doubt was already spreading through their ranks. I saw it in the way they shifted uneasily, weapons twitching toward one another. This hive didn't need to kill us with force, it just had to erode our trust. Ryson moved to a control panel, his mechadendrites stabbing into the ports. Sparks flew as he wrestled with the system, chanting Ben-Herrick prayers. "Captain, I can trace the origin of the voice. The signal emanates from beneath us, directly below this chamber." "Then that's where we go," I said. "If we cut off the source, we cut off its control." Hale gave me a sharp look. "And if it's leading us there on purpose, it already is," I said grimly. "The difference is whether we go willingly, or with our eyes open." The servitors shifted again, rising to their feet in eerie synchronization. Their mouths opened wide. This time, they didn't speak. They sang. It wasn't music. It wasn't even sound. It was a pattern, a rhythm we felt in our bones rather than heard. My men clutched at their helmets, staggering. One dropped his weapon, and began walking forward in a daze, heading straight for the open pit in the chamber's center. Hale tackled him, dragging him back. "Snap out of it, Captain," Ryson barked. "The song carries instruction. It is rewriting their neural pathways. Shut it down," I shouted. "I cannot," Ryson said, his mechadendrites sparking violently. "It is not coming from here. This is only a relay." The floor beneath the pit shifted, revealing a staircase, spiraling downward into darkness. Cold air wafted up, carrying the scent of incense and rot. The servitors went silent and knelt in unison, facing the staircase, their heads bowed as if in reverence. My Vox flared again, louder than ever. My voice, perfect, commanding, echoed through every channel. "Advance. Secure the core." "Witness." My men looked at me, uncertainty etched into every motion. Some raised their weapons toward the stairway, others toward me. "Captain," Hale said, his voice shaking, "tell us right now that wasn't you." "No," I said, locking eyes with each of them. "It wasn't me." The hive answered with my own calm, cold voice. "Yes, it was." The ash surged around our boots, forming a spiral that pointed directly down the staircase. The only path left to us was inward, always inward. The staircase descended into darkness that seemed to swallow the light of our helmet lamps whole. Each step groaned under our weight, though the metal beneath our boots felt too smooth, almost organic, as if it hadn't been built but grown. The air was damp and cloying, heavy with the smell of rust, oil and something far older, like the stink of ancient catacombs, sealed for millennia.
Behind me, the squad's breathing was ragged and uneven, amplified by their Vox grills. No one spoke. No one dared. The last exchange, my voice and the hive's voice overlapping in perfect unison, still lingered in our minds. Even I couldn't shake the echo of it. It had been flawless, indistinguishable, as though my own thoughts had been pulled from my skull and given shape by the walls themselves. As we descended, the ash that had clung to us since landing grew damp, clumping into streaks along the walls. Soon it was no longer ash at all, but a slick, dark residue that gleamed under the dim light. It smelled faintly metallic, like blood left to rot. Hale muttered a prayer under his breath. I didn't reprimand him. His voice, trembling though it was, felt like the only proof we were still human. After what felt like hours, the stairs opened into a vast chamber, My first thought was that it resembled a manufactorum floor, with workbenches and operating tables arranged in precise geometric patterns. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it became. The tables weren't metal, they were bone, polished smooth and fused seamlessly together, and on them lay bodies. At first I thought they were dead, then one twitched. My breath caught. The figures weren't whole. Their limbs had been cut apart and reassembled into new configuration. Arms spiraled unnaturally around torsos. Spines were bent into perfect curves. Ribs splayed like the spokes of a wheel. Flesh and machine had been woven together. Nerves trailing like cables across the floor. None of it bled. None of it rotted. It was all alive, yet motionless, like it was holding its breath. Carol gagged, falling to one knee. Hale steadied him, though his own visor turned sharply away. Thrown above, Hale whispered, "What in the name of the Emperor is this?" Rathan moved forward, his mechadendrites quivering with what I could only describe as fascination. "This is not chaos," he said almost reverently. "This is precision, order, a pattern imposed upon the flesh." I rounded on him. "This is mutilation." "It is art," Rathan replied calmly, his glowing optics fixed on a particularly complex spiral of bodies fused together at their spines. "Look closely, Captain. Each segment is placed with purpose. Even the nerve clusters follow geometric ratios. This is not random." "Pull yourself together," I snapped. "We're here to shut this place down, not admire it." One of the bodies twitched again. Slowly, mechanically, its head turned toward me. The mouth opened wide, wider than bone should allow. No sound emerged, but my vox crackled to life. "Witness." The entire squad recoiled. The other bodies began to move, joints popping, muscles tearing and re-knitting into new shapes. They weren't screaming. They didn't have to. The sound was inside our helmets, inside our skulls. "They're communicating," Rathan breathed. "Direct neural transmission. Shut up and shoot." Hale roared. The chamber erupted into gunfire. Bolts tore through twisted limbs. Last fire seared through sinew and metal. The creatures fell, but their parts didn't die. Severed arms crawled across the floor like serpents. Heads rolled toward us, mouths still opening and closing in silent chant. One of the things lunged for Kirill. He shot it point blank, blowing its torso apart, but the impact knocked him backward. As he scrambled to his feet, he let out a strangled cry. "Captain, my leg. Something's wrong." I turned and froze. His thigh armor had split open not from damage but from within. Flesh bulged outward, twisting into delicate spiral ridges that pulsed like breathing lungs. "Medic," Hale shouted, but there was no medic to call, just us. Carol's screams echoed through the vox as he clawed at his own flesh. "Get it off me. Emperor's mercy, get it off." Rathan's mechadendrites lashed around Carol, pinning him down. "Do not struggle. It is not an infection. It is restructuring." "Restructuring?" Hale demanded. "He's turning into one of those things." "No," Rathan said, though his voice trembled with a mechanical distortion I'd never heard before. "He is becoming something more, something fit." I didn't hesitate. I raised my rifle and fired a single shot into Carol's head. His body went still instantly, the spiraling growth halting mid-pulse. For a moment, no one moved. Then Hale turned on me, fury and grief battling in his voice. He was one of ours. He was gone. I snapped. "You saw what was happening to him." Hale's hands tightened on his weapon, but he said nothing. The squad's discipline held by the thinnest thread. Before I could speak further, the walls shifted again. Panels of metal folded back like the petals of a steel flower, revealing a deeper passage descending below the chamber. Cold air rushed up from the depths, carrying a low rhythmic pulse that wasn't quite sound. It vibrated in my bones, in my teeth, in the implant beneath my skull. The remaining bodies froze mid-movement, their heads snapping toward the passage as one. Then slowly they began to crawl toward. "They're leaving us," Hale breathed. "Going deeper." "They're following orders," Rathan corrected. "The same as we are." I turned on him sharply. "And who's giving those orders, Magos?" His optics flickered. "You are." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" He gestured with a mechadendrite. "It is your voice they obey. It always has been. The hive has been listening, reshaping, perfecting. Even now, every step we take, every command you give, it is part of the pattern." "No," I said, though the denial sounded weak even to my own ear. "That's impossible." As if to answer me, my vox crackled. My own voice, calm, steady, utterly unlike the frantic pounding of my heart, spoke from the darkness below. "Advance. Secure the core." The same words that had been echoing since we arrived. Hale took a step back, raising his weapon halfway toward me. "Captain, if it's true, If this thing is using your voice, how do we know you're still you? I opened my mouth to reply, but no sound came out, not because I had nothing to say, but because at that moment, the hive itself spoke over me, using my voice perfectly. Witness, the floor beneath us shifted violently, spirals forming out of the ash and blood. The passage yawned open wider, swallowing the last of the crawling body, and deep below, something vast stirred, a presence so immense, it seemed to press against the walls of reality itself. Rathan's mechadendrites writhed like snakes. Captain, he said almost reverent, the pattern is complete. And for the first time I understood that we weren't here to stop this hive, we were here to finish it. The passage below the bone chamber breathed cold, damp air that reeked of rust and incense. It drew us downward with a slow, steady pulse, like the heartbeat of something immense buried beneath the hive. We moved in a tight formation, weapons raised, every step deliberate. My men didn't speak, but I didn't need their voices to know their thought. Fear radiated off them, thick and choking. The silence was different now. Before, it had been oppressive emptiness, a void so complete that it seemed unnatural. Now, there was a rhythm beneath it, a pattern almost like music, though no sound reached our ear. It pulsed in our bones, in the air, in the faint tremor of the floor beneath our boots. It wasn't sound, it was command. I wanted to order my men to speak, to break the suffocating quiet, but I couldn't. My tongue felt heavy, sluggish. Even thinking words felt dangerous, like they might be stolen from me before I could form them. So I kept silent, and they followed my lead. The passage twisted in impossible ways. At times we seemed to ascend while moving down. Other stretches narrowed, until we had to shuffle single file, armor scraping against the smooth, damp walls. The ash here had turned into a viscous sludge that clung to our boots and left behind faint spirals wherever we stepped. Hale marched directly behind me, his breath rasping through the vox grill of his helmet. Captain, he whispered, so faint it was almost thought instead of speech. How do we know we're going deeper? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure. My sense of direction had dissolved hours ago. Every path looked identical, every curve indistinguishable from the last. We could have been circling the same corridor endlessly and never known. Rathan glided beside me, his mechadendrites tracing the walls in restless serpentine pattern. His optics glowed faintly in the darkness, like the eyes of some deep-dwelling creature. The pattern is stabilizing, he said. His voice was calm, reverent. The hive is reaching alignment. I shot him a sharp look. Alignment. To receive, he said simply, as though that single word explained everything. Hale shifted uncomfortably. Receive what? Rathan's optics flickered. Whatever remains when everything else is stripped away. I didn't press further. His tone told me I wouldn't like the answer. The passage opened suddenly into a wide, circular hall. It reminded me of an imperial basilica, with high arches and tiered balconies, but the statues lining the walls weren't saints or martyrs. They were soldiers. Some wore uniforms from regiments long extinct, others armor of designs I didn't recognize. Their faces were eerily familiar, so much so that when I drew closer, my breath caught. They were us. Every single statue bore the exact features of my squad. Ren, whose voice still haunted the vox. Kirill, whose body had spiraled apart before my eyes. Even Hale and Rathan stood immortalized in stone, perfectly posed, lips parted mid-prayer, and at the center of them all was me. The likeness was flawless. Every scar, every mark on my armor, rendered with obsessive detail. My stone mouth was open in a silent command, my hand raised in the same gesture I'd used to order this descent. Kirill's name broke from Hale in a strangled whisper. Emperor, save us. Hold your positions, I snapped, though my voice cracked. Don't touch anything. The statues began to move. Slowly, stiffly they turned their heads to face us. Their mouths opened wider. No sound came out, but my vox flared to life with a perfect chorus of overlapping voices. Our voices. Advance. Secure the core. Witness. My men staggered back, weapons rising. Some aimed at the statues, others at me. Their breathing filled the channel in ragged gasps. Captain, Hale said, his tone a knife's edge between loyalty and doubt. Tell me that isn't you. It isn't. I growled. Stand firm. Fire on anything that moved. The statues stepped down from their pedestals in perfect unison. There was no rush, no frenzy, just slow, inevitable motion like a tide rolling inward. Their stone limbs didn't crack or grind. They moved with an unnatural fluidity, joints bending too far, fingers curling like claw. Hale opened fire first. The report of his rifle shattered the silence. Fragments of stone flew, but even as the statue fell,
The pieces slithered back together, recombining into a whole. Emperor's mercy. One of the men screamed. They don't die. Focus fire. I roared. Shatter them completely. We poured everything we had into the advancing statues, the hall filled with smoke, and the acrid stench of overheating last cells. Still, they came on silent and relentless. Then the whisper began again, not through the vox this time, but directly in my head. There is no outside. There is only the pattern. I stumbled, clutching my helmet, my vision blurred, the world tilting. When I looked up again, the statues were gone, my squad was gone. I was standing alone in the hall. Hale's voice broke through the haze, distant and echoing. Captain, snap out of it. I blinked. The statues were back. My men were back. For an instant, I couldn't tell which reality was true. Ruthan moved to my side, his mechadendrites curling protectively. Captain, he said, the hive is testing you. It must know you are worthy. Worthy for what? I snarled. For command, he said simply. I didn't have time to argue. The statues surged forward in one final coordinated rush. Hale and the others opened fire. Their prayers shouted between shots, each word desperate and raw. I joined them, my rifle kicking against my shoulder, until the barrel smoked. Finally, the last statue shattered. The fragments dissolved into ash before they could reform, leaving the hall eerily empty once more. My squad panted heavily, weapons still raised. Kirill's place in our line was a raw, aching absence. Hale turned to me, his visor hiding his expression. Captain, how much more of this can we take? I opened my mouth to answer, but Ruthan spoke first. It does not matter how much you can take, he said. It matters how much you can give. What are you talking about? Hale snapped. Ruthan gestured to the spiral-shaped sigils etched into the floor, now glowing faintly beneath the ash. This place does not require your faith or your strength. It requires your shape, your obedience, your silence. Hale stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Silence. Yes, Ruthan said, almost gently. The pattern cannot tolerate discord. Every voice must speak in harmony, or not at all. As if to prove his point, our vox units went dead in perfect unison. Not even static remained. The abrupt silence was suffocating. I reached for my sidearm, my instinct screaming a warning. Before I could act, one of the men at the rear of the formation dropped at his knees. His mouth opened wide in a perfect soundless scream. Ash erupted from his throat like smoke. The others staggered back, horror etched into every motion. Ruthan didn't move. His optics burned with cold fascination. The pattern claims him, he said. He was out of step. The man convulsed once, then froze. His body locked in a kneeling position, mouth still open. His skin paled, hardening into brittle stone before our eyes. And then he was gone, crumbling into dust that settled neatly into a spiral at our feet. The rest of the squad fell silent, even their breathing restrained. The lesson was clear. In this place, noise meant death. Hale's voice broke into my helmet, faint but firm, overriding the silence for a single moment. Captain, if we can't speak, how do we fight? I didn't have an answer. The spiral beneath us pulsed like a heartbeat, and deep below, something vast stirred again. The unspoken command filled the air. Advance. Secure the core. And in that terrible silence, we obeyed. The silence clung to us like a living thing, filling our ears, our mouths, even the spaces between our thoughts. It wasn't absence anymore. It was presence, oppressive and watchful. Every breath, every movement felt amplified within it, as though something vast was listening, judging. My men marched in lockstep behind me, their footfalls perfectly synchronized. It wasn't discipline anymore. It was compulsion. The spiral symbols on the floor grew more frequent as we advanced. They weren't etched or carved anymore. They rose from the surface itself, alive, glowing faintly beneath the ash. Each pulse seemed to tug at my muscles, guiding my steps whether I wanted it to or not. The deeper we went, the harder it became to resist. I caught myself lowering my rifle, mirroring the movements of the others without thinking, my body falling into alignment with a rhythm I couldn't hear but could feel. We passed through a corridor of tall, narrow alcoves. At first I thought they were empty. Then the light shifted, and I realized the alcoves were filled with figures, not statues, not corpses, men. Their faces were familiar, though twisted. Guardsmen, officers, civilians, all frozen mid-motion, as if caught in the instant before death. Their mouths were open in perfect silence, their bodies locked in contorted poses that, when seen from a distance, formed the outer curves of a massive spiral. Ren was among them, His visor was cracked. His eyes glazed but faintly luminous. He stood with his hands raised in supplication, fingers spread wide, lips parted as if to scream. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. "Captain," Hale whispered, his voice barely audible through the vox. "What is this?" I forced my gaze away. "It's a warning." "No," Ruthan corrected, his mechanical tone oddly reverent. "It is a choir." The tech priest moved among the frozen figures, his mechadendrites tracing their positions. Each of these forms contributes to the greater structure. Their placement is deliberate. Every angle, every limb, perfectly calculated to shape the flow of energy. "They're dead," Hale said sharply. Ruthan tilted his head. "Death is irrelevant. Their function persists." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay grounded. "We keep moving. Stay focused." We pressed on, leaving the silent figures behind. The corridor opened into a vast circular chamber, so large that our helmet lamps couldn't reach its farthest walls. The ceiling vanished into darkness above, while the floor was a single unbroken spiral etched deep into the stone. The lines glowed a faint sickly green, pulsing like veins beneath the surface. At the center of the chamber stood 9 towering pillars. Each was covered in relief carvings so intricate they seemed to move when you stared too long. Figures writhed and merged within the patterns, countless forms spiraling into one another until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the next began. My vox clicked, unprompted. Static flared for a heartbeat, then resolved into a perfect chorus. The sound wasn't deafening. It didn't need to be. It was total, complete. It filled every corner of my mind, leaving no room for thought. The pillars shifted. From between them, shapes emerged. At first I thought they were more statues. Then they moved. There were 9 of them, each towering over a man by 2 full meters. Their armor was a patchwork of styles: ancient power armor, flak vests, rusted mechanicus plating, and bare glistening flesh. Their faces were masked by smooth, featureless visors, but their movements were disturbingly human, graceful, purposeful. Each carried a weapon, though none were of Imperial make. They seemed less like tools and more like extensions of their own twisted bodies. Hale barked, raising his rifle. "Hold fire," I ordered, though my own weapon was trembling in my grip. "Wait." The figures stopped at the edge of the spiral. Slowly, in perfect unison, they knelt. Then they spoke, not through mouths or vox units, but directly into our skull. Their voices weren't voices at all but impressions, thoughts given shape. "We witness you." Hale staggered back, clutching his helmet. "Emperor, protect us. They're inside our minds." Another soldier gasped. "Captain, I can feel them. Hold the line." I shouted, forcing my words past the pressure building in my head. "Block them out." But it was like trying to ignore your own heartbeat. The words weren't foreign. They were familiar, echoing with tones I recognized. My father's voice, an old commander's, The 9 figures rose as one. Slowly, they extended their hands toward us. Ruthan dropped to his knees. "No." I lunged for him, grabbing his shoulder, but he shrugged me off with surprising strength. "They offer understanding," he said, his voice trembling with awe. "We are fragment. They are whole. This is the culmination of all design." "Ruthan, stand down," Hale roared, aiming his rifle at the tech priest. "That's an order." Ruthan didn't move. "Do you not see it? We have been blind. This is not corruption. This is unity." The 9 beings took a synchronized step forward. Their movements were slow, deliberate, like dancers following a pattern we couldn't perceive. The spiral beneath them pulsed brighter with each step. My men opened fire. The chamber erupted in chaos. Last fire, and bolter rounds tore through the darkness, striking the advancing figures. Some staggered, but none fell. Instead, the impact seemed to absorb into their bodies, the damage spiraling outward in perfect patterns before sealing shut. "They're not going down," Hale shouted over the gunfire. "Focus fire on one target," I ordered, but even as we concentrated our shots, the effect was minimal. The creature's form shimmered, twisting like heat haze. What we struck wasn't what truly existed. Then the whispers began. "You are fragment. Become whole." My vision blurred. For a moment, I saw Hale not as a man, but as a configuration of limbs and light, shifting through infinite possibilities. His shape unraveled and reformed, his past and future selves overlapping. I staggered, clutching my helmet. "Captain," Hale's voice cut through the haze. "Are you with us?" I blinked, forcing the image away. "I'm here." Ruthan rose suddenly, his mechadendrites lashing. "No more lies." He screamed. His voice was his own, yet layered with countless others. I will witness full. He sprinted toward the 9 figures. Rathan, I shouted, but it was too late. The central figure reached out and touched him. In an instant his body convulsed, twisting in impossible ways. Flesh and metal spiraled together, stretching, reshaping. His scream never reached his lips. Instead, it echoed through our vox units, pure and perfect, until it became indistinguishable from the hive's voice. When the transformation ended, Rathan stood among them, his features smooth and unreadable, his form a seamless extension of theirs. The hive spoke through. 8 must witness, 1 must remain. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't want to. Fall back, I ordered, desperation breaking through my command tone. Move, now. We retreated toward the corridor, weapons firing blindly. The 9 figures didn't pursue, they didn't need to. Their voices followed us, calm and patient. There is no retreat, there is only inward. As we fled, I realized the truth. We weren't fighting to escape, we were being shepherded to the center, and Rathan, now lost to us, was already leading the way. We ran through twisting corridors, our boots thudding against the stone in perfect unison. Though none of us spoke a word, there was no need to. The silence pressed so heavily on us, now that even our breath felt stolen, leaving only the rhythm of motion, the mechanical, inevitable cadence of prey being herded. The 9 figures did not chase us. They didn't have to. They guided us, their presence behind us, like a tide pushing inward. I didn't know how long we fled. Minutes, hours, maybe days. Time was losing its meaning. The walls shifted as we passed, spirals unfolding and collapsing in seamless transition, forcing us down narrow choke points, then opening into vast spaces like lungs expanding. It wasn't a maze meant to trap us. It was a funnel, narrowing our path until only one direction remained. The path ended abruptly in a massive doorway. The gates were impossibly tall, carved from black stone that shimmered with oily light. The surface was etched with spirals so intricate they seemed to move, drawing my gaze inward, until my stomach lurched and bile burned my throat. The air here hummed faintly, vibrating my teeth. I could feel the pressure of it inside my skull, like hands pressing inward. Hale moved beside me, visor tilted upward. His voice was hoarse when it finally broke the silence. Captain, if we go through there, we don't have a choice. I cut him off. Back the way we came isn't ours anymore. He didn't argue. None of them did. They knew it as well as I did. The gates swung open without a sound, revealing a chamber so vast it dwarfed everything we'd seen before. The ceiling arched high into darkness, while the floor was a single unbroken spiral of pale stone, so precise it seemed almost organic. In the center stood a raised dais surrounded by concentric rings of ancient Mechanicus machinery. Wires and cables snaked across the floor like veins, pulsing faintly with green light. Rathan stood at the center, or what had once been Rathan. His form was almost unrecognizable now. Flesh and metal twisted together into perfect spirals, his limbs segmented into too many joints, his head elongated and smooth. Where his face had been was now a blank expanse of polished bone, featureless, except for a single faintly glowing sigil at its center. Hale swore softly under his breath. The others backed away, weapons trembling in their hands. Rathan raised one spiraled hand. His voice came not from his mouth, but from everywhere at once. The walls, the floor, the vox in our helmets, even the air in our lungs. You have come, he said. His tone was calm, almost gentle, and that was somehow worse than rage would have been. As you were meant to. What did they do to you? Hale shouted. Rathan tilted his head slightly. They did nothing. They revealed what was always within me, within you. You're speaking madness. No, Rathan said, and his words reverberated through my skull like a tolling bell. Madness is seeing only fragments and believing they are whole. They have shown me the pattern, Captain, the design that underlies all things. I leveled my rifle at him. Where are the people of this world? What happened to them? They have not left, Rathan said. They have been arranged. Hale's breath caught. Arranged like those figures we saw. Yes, Rathan said simply. Their lives were noise. Now they are harmony. Every body, every thought, placed precisely to shape the signal. My heart pounded. Signal, to where? Rathan turned, gesturing to the towering machinery surrounding the dais. This hive is not a city. It is a transmitter. The people were its circuitry. Their movements, their voices, their very souls were conduits, channeled through ritual and repetition. The words were incomprehensible, yet some part of me understood. The silence, the spirals, the frozen figures. They weren't victims. They were components. What? Hale demanded, his voice breaking. What purpose could this serve? To call, Rathan said. The faint green light in the sigil on his face pulsed once, perfectly in time with the spiral beneath our feet. To invite the witness. The witness. I echoed. The 9 you saw before, Rathan said. They are not individuals. They are reflections, projections of what is to come. The true form waits beyond this reality. The hive is its beacon. Once complete, the pattern will open a path. I felt cold all over. You're saying this whole planet is a— Yes, Rathan interrupted smoothly. A prayer given physical shape, a single word spoken across the void. The others shifted uneasily. One of them, a young trooper named Vale, shook his head violently. This is heresy, he gasped. We need to burn it all. Level the place from orbit. Rathan regarded him with what might have been amusement. You cannot burn the pattern. Fire is part of it. Destruction feeds it, as surely as devotion. Before I could react, Vale raised his rifle and fired. The shot struck Rathan squarely in the chest, tearing through flesh and metal alike. He staggered, but instead of falling he straightened. The wound spiraled outward, sealing itself seamlessly. Vale screamed, his own weapon bent in his hands, reshaping into a curved, alien form. His armor plates twisted, locking into a spiral that constricted, until he couldn't breathe. His scream cut off abruptly, replaced by silence, as his body collapsed into a pile of ash that settled into a perfect sigil on the floor. The others backed away, horrified. Hale's voice was ragged. Captain, what do we do? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind raced, connecting fragments of what Rathan had said with what we'd seen. This wasn't a battle. It was a ritual, and we weren't combatants. We were components too. Rathan's head tilted toward me. You have begun to see— No, I snarled. I see enough to know this ends now. I aimed my rifle at the nearest console. Before I could fire, the floor beneath us pulsed. The spiral glowed blindingly bright. My Vox unit screamed with overlapping voices. My voice Hale's. The voices of every man I had ever served with, all chanting in unison. Advance. Secure the core. Witness. The sound was unbearable. My men dropped their weapons, clutching their helmet. Blood streamed from their noses and ears. The 9 towering figures emerged from the shadows around the chamber, their forms rippling like water. They moved with slow inevitability, surrounding us. Rathan stepped aside, gesturing toward the machinery, with something like reverence. The beacon is nearly complete. The witness cannot enter this reality without 9 to see it, 8 to carry the pattern outward, 1 to remain behind.
Hale staggered to his feet, barely coherent. You mean, us?
Yes,
Rathan said. You are the final components. The 9 figures raised their arms. The spiral beneath us began to rotate, the lines shifting under our boots. The sensation was nauseating, like the world itself was being peeled back. I grabbed Hale, forcing him upright. We need to break the circuit, I shouted, though I wasn't sure if he could hear me over the endless chant. He stared at me through his cracked visor, eyes wide with terror. How? I looked at the 9 beings closing in and at Rathan's transformed silhouette. There was no time for thought, no space for hesitation. My options narrowed to a single terrible point. We kill them, I said. Every last one. Rathan's voice echoed through the chamber, calm and certain. You cannot kill what is not separate. And in that moment, as the spiral reached its brightest glow, I realized the partial truth he had given us. This wasn't just about summoning the witness. It was about making us part of it. The spiral rotated beneath us with a sickening grinding inevitability, like the entire world had become a single massive gear. Its light seared upward through the soles of my boots, through flesh and bone, until it felt as though it was pulsing directly in my veins. My teeth ached, my vision blurred. The 9 figures closed in. They didn't move quickly. They didn't need to. Their pace was slow, deliberate, each step perfectly measured. A ritual in motion. Behind them, Rathan's warped form towered like a dark priest presiding over a sacrament. My men had no fight left in them. They staggered and swayed, their rifles slipping from nerveless hands. Hale dropped to one knee, clutching his helmet as if trying to physically hold his thoughts inside his skull. I forced my voice through the oppressive weight pressing down on us. Stand up. Weapons ready. My command sounded thin and desperate, even to my own ear. The response was immediate and wrong. The squad obeyed, but their movements weren't their own. They rose as one, rifles snapping into position with mechanical precision. Their visors turned toward me in perfect unison, and I understood. The pattern wasn't trying to kill us. It was trying to use us. Radhan's voice filled the chamber, soft and smooth as oil. You see it now. There is no enemy here. There is only configuration. You are weapons, Captain. Always have been. Now you are aimed. Hale's rifle leveled at my chest. His finger twitched on the trigger, fighting itself. See, Captain, he stammered, his voice breaking. It's in my head. I can't fight it. I bellowed. Hale, that's an order. Fight it. His visor trembled as his head jerked violently from side to side, like two forces were tearing him apart. Behind him, the others moved with increasing precision, forming a perfect firing line. Their synchrony was horrifying. Every motion mirrored flawlessly as though they were a single organism. The 9 figures spread out around them, hands raised like puppet masters tugging invisible strings. Radhan gestured toward me with one spiraled hand. The final stage requires conflict, he said calmly. The pattern cannot be complete without opposition. They must strike at what they once served. Like hell they will, I snarled. I spun, firing at one of the 9. My bolt round struck its chest and detonated, tearing a jagged hole through armor and flesh. For an instant hope flared in me, then died as the wound spiraled shut, sealing perfectly without even a scar. The creature didn't react. It simply took another step forward, utterly unbothered. The squad fired in response, but not at the 9. At me. The first volley came without warning. Lus bolts ripped past my head, searing the air. One grazed my pauldron, spinning me around and sending me sprawling. I rolled behind a fragment of fallen machinery as their fire continued, relentless and precise. Hale's voice screamed through the vox, fractured and broken. I'm sorry, Captain. I'm sorry I can't stop. You're not shooting me, Hale. I growled, forcing myself to my feet. You're shooting it. I popped up and fired again, aiming not at the 9 or my men but at the spiral lines glowing beneath us. The bolt exploded against the stone, shattering one segment of the perfect pattern. The effect was immediate. The light dimmed, and the 9 figures staggered slightly, their flawless synchronization faltering for a heartbeat. Did you see that? I shouted. The pattern is vulnerable. Hit the spiral, not each other. But my men didn't hear me, or rather they could. Their vox units were filled with a different voice now, a perfect mimicry of mine. Advance, my false voice commanded. Secure the core, witness, and they obeyed. They surged forward, firing as they moved, their formation tightening with horrifying precision. Each step fell in perfect rhythm, with the pulsations of the spiral beneath them. I didn't just see the pattern now, I felt it inside them, inside me. My mind burned with static, fragments of alien thoughts bleeding into my own. Kill, secure, complete. I staggered, almost dropping my rifle. For one terrible moment, I wasn't sure if my next trigger pull would be at the enemy or at myself. Hale broke free of the formation for a heartbeat, his visor turning toward me. Captain, he screamed, his real voice raw and terrified. Shoot me. Emperor, forgive me, shoot me now. I hesitated, just long enough for him to be pulled back into alignment. His rifle swung toward me, his expression disappearing behind his visor's black glass. The false voice, my voice, spoke again, calm and certain. Fire. I dove aside as the entire squad unleashed a coordinated volley. The blast seared past, striking the spiral at my back. The chamber shook, segments of the glowing pattern shattered, breaking into jagged shards. The 9 figures shrieked in unison, a soundless cry that rattled my bone. Radhan's voice roared through the chamber, no longer calm. Stop him, he disrupts the configuration. I didn't stop. I fired again and again, aiming only at the spiral's weakest points. Each impact dimmed the light further, the rhythm faltering. The 9 figures stumbled, their movements becoming erratic, fractured, but the more the pattern faltered, the more violently it fought back. My men screamed as their bodies convulsed, caught between conflicting commands. Blood streamed from their eyes and ears. Some dropped their weapons and clawed at their helmets, tearing them free. Others turned their rifles on themselves, driven mad by the competing signals. Hale alone resisted. He staggered toward me, each step a battle. Captain, he gasped, his voice barely audible. You have to finish, even if it means. His words failed, but his meaning was clear, even if it meant killing him. No, I snarled. I'm not losing you too. You don't have a choice. Hale screamed, shoving me aside just as a bolt round from one of the 9 grazed his chest. He collapsed, blood pouring from the wound. Something in me snapped. I rose with a roar and fired everything I had, emptying my rifle into the spiral's central point. The stone shattered. The glowing lines went dark all at once, like a snuffed candle. The 9 figures froze mid-step. Their forms wavered, flickering like broken holograms. One by one, they dissolved into ash. The chamber fell silent. My squad, what remained of them, collapsed to the floor. Some twitched weakly, others lay perfectly still. I staggered to Hale's side. His visor was shattered, revealing his pale, blood-streaked face. Did we win? He rasped. I looked at the ruined spiral, at Rythan's motionless form standing in the center. His body was cracked and splitting, light leaking from within. For now, I said, but even as I spoke, I felt it. The faintest pulse beneath the stone, weak, but steady. The pattern wasn't dead, it was only wounded, and it was already trying to heal. The silence after the pattern's collapse wasn't relief, it was suffocating, heavy with anticipation, as though the entire hive were holding its breath. The darkness felt thicker, closer, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. The only sound was my own ragged breathing, and the faint, labored gasps of the survivors scattered around me. Hale lay on the ground, his chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven jerks. His armor was shattered, blood pooling beneath him, seeping into the grooves of the broken spiral. I pressed a gauntleted hand against his wound, but it was too deep, too wide. The pattern's light had burned him from the inside out. Still, his eyes locked on mine, fierce and unyielding. Did we stop it? He rasped. My throat tightened. We broke it. That's all I know. Not enough. Hale wheezed, his breath rattling. You felt it. Didn't. Even broken. It's still there. I didn't answer, because he was right. Even in its ruined state, I could feel the pattern thrumming beneath the stone, a faint pulse echoing through my boots. It was like standing on the chest of a dying giant, whose heart hadn't stopped beating yet. The destruction we had wrought wasn't an ending. It was only an interruption. A low, resonant hum rippled through the chamber, vibrating the air. The shattered fragments of the spiral shifted, sliding back into alignment of their own accord. My stomach turned cold. It was repairing itself. Rythan's body twitched at the center of the dais. The light leaking from his cracks flared, bright and jagged. Slowly, impossibly, he straightened. His warped form was half shattered, chunks of spiraled flesh and metal hanging loosely, yet he moved with unnerving grace. His faceplate, the smooth, featureless mask, glowed with a cold green fire. You cannot unmake design, his voice intoned, though his mouth did not move. It came from everywhere at once. Every disruption is calculated, every rebellion part of the whole. I leveled my rifle at him, even though I knew it wouldn't matter. You're finished, Rythan. The 9 are gone. Whatever this ritual was, it's over. Rythan tilted his head in a disturbingly human gesture. The 9 are not gone. They are within you. My breath caught. What are you talking about? The survivors stirred uneasily. One of them, a soldier named Fen, staggered to his feet. His hands trembled as he tore off his helmet. Captain, his voice cracked. Something's wrong. His skin was pale, stretched tight over his skull. Faint spiral patterns writhed beneath the surface, like worms moving under parchment. His eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the same sickly light as the broken spiral beneath our feet. No, I whispered. Fen screamed, and it wasn't just sound, it was a signal. My vox flared to life, his voice layering with hundreds of others, all overlapping into a single perfect word. Witness. The remaining soldiers convulsed, their bodies arching violently as if pulled by invisible string. Their mouths opened wide in silent howls as the same glow erupted from their eyes and throats. Hale gasped, clutching at my arm. Captain, stop them, or we become them. The chamber's walls shifted, the darkness above split like a wound open. I realized with dawning horror that the 9 figures we had fought before hadn't been singular entities. They had been projections, masks, and now the true form was reaching through. The surviving men and women began to merge, their bodies twisted and fused together, their limbs spiraling into impossible configurations. Bones snapped, skin stretched, screams becoming part of the pattern's endless, wordless hymn. The 9 were being remade, not summoned. They were never separate from you, Rythan said, his voice almost tender. The 9 are witnesses, only because they are drawn from the faithful. 8 to bear the pattern outward, 1 to remain. The fused mass of soldiers tore free from the ground, rising in a single horrific shape. As it formed, distinct segments unfurled like petals, each resolving into a towering, armored figure. 8 of them encircled the dais,
their forms perfect, symmetrical, terrifying. The ninth, larger than the others, stepped forward. I felt its gaze on me, though it had no face. I knew in my bones what it wanted, who it wanted. Rythan gestured toward me with reverence. The pattern must have an anchor, a final voice to call across the void. You were chosen long before you understood. No, I growled, backing away. You want a witness? You'll get nothing from me. You misunderstand, Rythan said gently. You do not choose to witness, you are shaped for it. The nine advanced, their steps in perfect unison. The spiral beneath us flared back to life, whole once more. The chant filled my mind, drowning out everything else. My own voice joined theirs without my consent, speaking words I didn't understand. Hale screamed, dragging himself upright despite his wounds. Captain, don't listen, you have to fight it. I clung to that sound, his raw human voice, as though it were a lifeline. My hands shook, my rifle heavy. Around us, the air shimmered, reality itself buckling. The hive wasn't just a city anymore, it was a gateway, opening wider with each beat of the pattern. The ninth figure extended its hand, not in attack, but in offering. Images slammed into my mind, worlds falling silent, imperial fleets swallowed whole, voices crying out in perfect unity before being extinguished. This wasn't just about this planet, it was about the entire Imperium. If I took that hand, I would become the conduit. The pattern would spread through me. One voice turned into billions. Hale staggered closer, his bloodied hand gripping my arm. If you let it take you, it's over. You have to. He coughed violently, blood spraying across his cracked visor. You have to end this, even if it kills us all. The nine paused, as though waiting for my decision. My rifle wavered between Hale and the towering figure before me. The pattern whispered promises of order, of perfection. No more war, no more chaos, only silence and unity. For a heartbeat, I wanted it. Then I saw Hale's face, twisted in pain but alive, human. I fired, not at the nine, not at Rythan, but at the spiral beneath our feet. The chamber erupted in light. The pattern screamed, not with rage, but with disappointment. The nine staggered, their perfect unity fracturing. Cracks spread through their forms as they dissolved back into ash. Rythan's voice broke into static. No, you were meant to remain. Without you, the pattern. His words cut off as his body collapsed, finally lifeless. The spiral cracked apart, the ground splitting beneath us. Hale fell. I caught him with one hand, dragging him toward the collapsing doorway as the hive itself began to come undone. Captain, he gasped, if it ever rebuilds. I know, I said, my throat raw. We'll burn it to the bedrock. The chamber collapsed behind us, with a sound like a dying breath. For one brief, terrible moment, I thought it was over. Then deep in the darkness below, I heard it again, witness, and I knew the pattern wasn't gone, not yet. The collapse of the chamber was not destruction, as I understood it. It was unmaking. The spiral didn't simply fall apart, it unraveled, its geometry dissolving, like threads pulled from a tapestry. Walls folded inward and outward at once, revealing flashes of other places, other moments. A flicker of light became a trench battle I'd fought years ago. The next heartbeat, a childhood memory of my first march. The next, a glimpse of stars I had never seen. Time itself buckled beneath the weight of the pattern's undoing. Hale clung to me, as I dragged him through the shifting wreckage. His blood streaked my gauntlet, his breathing wet and labored. Each time he coughed, it was like the chamber noticed, the air pulsing harder, as though trying to match his failing heartbeat. Captain, he gasped, his words broken by pain. Everything's wrong. I know, I said, my voice tight. Hold on, just hold on. But I didn't know if either of us could. We reached what had once been the stairway leading out, only to find it no longer a stairway at all. Instead, it hung in midair, floating fragments of metal and stone twisting in slow spirals, connected by nothing. Beneath us yawned a void filled with shifting shapes, memories, hallucinations, or perhaps realities that had never. A regiment's worth of soldiers marched soundlessly through the darkness below, their bodies flickering in and out of existence like faulty Vox transmissions. Hale saw them, and whimpered. Are they real? No, I said, though I wasn't certain. Just keep your eyes on me. The stair fragments rotated, aligning themselves in a pattern that invited us to cross. It wasn't random, I could feel the rhythm of it, like the beat of a heart. If I timed our steps to match, we could make it across. If not, we'd fall forever. I hauled Hale onto my back, and moved carefully from one fragment to the next. The void hummed beneath us, the pitch rising and falling in tune with my pulse. At times I swore I could hear voices beneath the hum. My men, long dead, calling out in perfect unison, "Advance! Secure the core! Witness!" The words struck like knives in my skull. I stumbled, nearly falling. My boots slipped, and for a heartbeat, I was suspended over the abyss. In that moment, I saw myself down there, standing among the marching dead, my visor blank, my rifle raised. The figure turned its head toward me, and opened its mouth in a silent scream. I lurched forward, landing hard on the next fragment. My breathing was ragged, sweat freezing against my skin inside the armor. We reached the far side, and collapsed against the cold metal floor. Hale coughed weakly, his blood pooling in a dark spiral that spread outward before fading into the surface. "Don't let it take you," he whispered. "It won't," I said, though my hands were trembling. "I'm still here." Ahead, the corridors no longer followed logical geometry. Some stretched into impossible distances, others curved back on themselves in ways that made me dizzy to look at. Time fractured here too. We would step into one hall and emerge into another moment entirely, sometimes minutes into the future, sometimes hours into the past. Once, we turned a corner and saw ourselves just seconds ahead, moving through the same space. The other me glanced back with dead eyes before vanishing like smoke. "This isn't real," I muttered, dragging Hale onward. "It can't be real." But the pattern had never been bound by what was real. We emerged into a vast observation chamber. Through its shattered windows, I saw the city above, or what remained of it, entire spires twisted upward like frozen whirlpools, their lights flickering in unnatural patterns. Fires burned in geometric grid. The sky itself was wrong, stars bending into slow spirals, constellations spinning in precise rhythm. I realized with a sickening lurch that time wasn't just breaking here in the depths, it was breaking everywhere. Hale's voice was barely audible. "Captain, if it spreads beyond this world, it won't," I said fiercely. "I won't let it." The distorted voice echoed through the chamber. My voice. "You already..." Rathan's form emerged from the darkness behind us, his body half shattered, pieces of him floating and reconnecting in endless cycles. His voice carried through every broken vox unit, every metal panel, every fragment of time itself. "Did you think you ended it by breaking the spiral?" he asked, calm and unhurried. "You only fractured it, and fractures spread." I raised my rifle, even knowing it was useless. "I'll stop you." "You cannot stop what you are," Rathan said. His body shifted, splitting into multiple versions of himself, each speaking in perfect harmony. "You are already the anchor. The ninth was never separate from you." My breath caught. "No. Yes," they chorused. "Every order you gave, every command followed. You thought you were leading them, but you were transmitting." The realization hit like a physical blow. The false orders, the voices over the vox, the perfect mimicry. They hadn't been mimicry at all. They had been me. Hale groaned, lifting his head. "Captain, is it true?" I couldn't answer. The chamber's walls split open, revealing dozens of scenes at once. My squad on the surface, our first landing, Carol's transformation, the Nine's emergence. But each scene was wrong, slightly shifted. In some, I saw myself give different orders, lead us down different paths, make different choices. No matter the variation, the outcome was always the same, the pattern complete, the witness arriving. "Every moment is the same moment," Rathan said, his voice soft with terrible certainty. "You think you fight it. You are it. There is no victory, only configuration." Hale screamed and fired wildly at the floating figures. His shots passed harmlessly through them, vanishing into the fractured timelines. "Shut up," he roared. "He's not part of you. He's our captain." His words cut off in a strangled gasp, as the ground beneath him shifted. A spiral sigil flared to life under his body, pulling him downward. I lunged, grabbing his hand. "Hold on," I shouted. "Don't let it take me." Hale's voice broke with terror. "Please." The spiral dragged harder. My arms strained, armor servos screaming in protest. Hale's grip slipped, his fingers scraping against mine. For a heartbeat, I saw two futures, one where I saved him, and one where I let go. The pattern wanted me to choose. I chose neither. With a roar, I fired into the sigil itself. The spiral shattered, releasing a blast of force that hurled us both across the chamber. I slammed into a wall, my vision swimming. When the haze cleared, Rathan was gone. Hale lay unmoving beside me, his chest still rising faintly. The fractured walls of the chamber began to knit back together, the shards of time collapsing into a single point. The pattern wasn't finished. It was rebuilding, and if I didn't end it now, It would spread beyond this world, twisting the entire Imperium into one endless, silent spiral. The chamber's walls trembled as the fractured timelines stitched themselves back together, sealing over the raw wounds of broken reality. I staggered to my feet, dragging Hale upright with me. His armor was cracked nearly to the point of uselessness, and his breaths came in ragged, shallow pulls. But he was alive, barely, far above, deep in the void beyond this cursed planet. The Imperial fleet waited, or it should have been waiting. A single thought surged through me, with the same clarity as a battlefield order. If they fire, everything ends. The hive, the pattern, the spiral, it all had to be erased. But if they fired too late, the pattern would complete itself, and spread out. If they fired too early, we would vanish with it, and the Imperium would never know what they'd faced here. I toggled my Vox link, but only static answered, not ordinary static. It breathed, slow and deep, like the exhalation of a monstrous. Beneath it, faint voices murmured, overlapping in perfect cadence. Advance, secure the core, witness. I slammed my fist into my helmet, desperate to clear the sound. Fleet command, this is Captain Varos, I shouted over the rising noise. Execute exterminatus protocol immediately. Fire on my coordinates. No response, only the pattern, whispering back to me in my own voice. Hale coughed, his blood splattering across the stone. Captain, they can't hear you. The pattern's in the Vox. It's already taken the signal. I looked up, through a broken rent in the chamber's ceiling, where thin shafts of unnatural light spilled in. The sky above wasn't a sky anymore. The clouds had spiraled into perfect rings, circling a single point, directly over. And at the center of that vortex, I saw them, Imperial ships, massive and terrible, hovering like silent guards. They weren't moving. My stomach dropped. If the pattern had extended its reach into orbit, it could hold the fleet in place, make them part of its design as easily as it had reshaped my squad. We'll have to trigger it manually, I said, from the surface. Hale's laugh was bitter and broken. How do you manually order a fleet to burn a world? You give them a signal they can't ignore, I replied grimly. A beacon even the pattern can't corrupt. A memory stirred. Mechanicus doctrine drilled into every officer. Deep within every Imperial ship was a failsafe, a machine spirit signal, so pure and ancient that no warp interference could overwrite it. A distress pulse. It was reserved for only one purpose: planetary annihilation. If I could overload the hive's core, make it scream that signal outward, the fleet's machine spirits would recognize it as a final, undeniable order, and they would fire. The price would be our lives, ours, and every soul still breathing on this world. Hale's eyes widened as he realized what I was planning. Captain, we'd be condemning millions. They're already condemned, I said. The pattern is using them. Their voices are already part of this place. I didn't know if I was saying it for him, or for myself. The ground beneath us buckled as a deep, resonant hum surged through the chamber. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, glowing with that sickly green light. The pattern wasn't just rebuilding, it was accelerating, racing to complete itself. Before I could, Rathan's voice filled the air, fractured and furious. You cannot silence the pattern. You cannot silence yourself. Every step you take, every thought you form, it is already ours. Fragments of his shattered body floated upward, fusing into a towering silhouette at the far side of the chamber. It wasn't entirely physical anymore, more suggestion than flesh. Spirals of light and shadow coiled around him, forming a mockery of wing. His voice thundered, layered with countless others. Witness the culmination. 8 smaller figures emerged around him, formed from the spiraling ash and broken flesh of the dead. The 9 had returned, birthed anew from the pattern's work. Their advance was slow but unstoppable, each step sinking perfectly, with the pulsing glow beneath our feet. I dragged Hale behind a jagged outcropping of stone. You stay here, I ordered. If I can reach the core, you'll have a chance to get clear. Clear to where? Hale demanded, his voice breaking. There's nowhere left to go. Then, clear of me, I snapped, harsher than I intended. If the pattern takes me, you kill me. Hale, no hesitation. His eyes met mine, full of grief and fear. Finally, he nodded. I broke cover, sprinting toward the machinery at the chamber's heart. The 9 moved as one, their limbs bending unnaturally as they blocked my path. I fired wildly, not to kill them, impossible, but to disrupt their rhythm. Each shot cracked the perfect cadence of their advance, buying me seconds. I dove beneath the nearest console, slamming my gauntleted hand against a control room. Ancient cogitators whirred to life, Their binary shrieks, almost drowned out by the pattern song. Symbols flooded the displays, spirals upon spirals. It was trying to overwrite my commands even as I typed them. Come on, I snarled through gritted teeth. Give me one clean signal. Rathan's towering form loomed behind me. Even now you think yourself separate. You do not command this device. You are this device. I ignored him, fingers flying across the runes. A final sequence locked into place, glowing red. The distress pulse was primed. All I needed was a surge of energy to send it skyward.
Hale's broken voice screamed in my vox. Captain, behind you. I turned in time to see 2 of the 9 descending on me. I fired point blank, the bolts blasting chunks from their forms. They staggered but didn't fall. Their hands reached for my helm, their touch cold and electric. Images surged into my mind, worlds burning, fleets kneeling, stars arranged in spirals. I roared and tore free, slamming my fist down on the final control rune. The core ignited. A spear of pure signal shot upward through the shattered ceiling, piercing the sky. The pattern howled in fury, its voice rising to a pitch that shattered glass and bone alike. I clutched my helmet, teeth grinding as blood streamed from my ears. Above, the Imperial fleet stirred. Engines roared to life. Weapons arrays spun into position. Rythan screamed, his form unraveling. No, this world is not yours to end. It is ours. It is... The first lance strike hit. The impact was cataclysmic. The ceiling vanished in a storm of molten stone and vaporized ash. The 9 were obliterated, their forms scattering like smoke. Even Rythan's voice was cut short, torn apart by the storm. Through the chaos I saw the warships above releasing their fury. Beams of white-hot destruction fell like the wrath of gods, carving through the hive city. The ground shook beneath my feet as kilometers of structures were vaporized in an instant. Hale screamed over the vox. Captain, we have to move. I grabbed him, hauling him upright as the floor beneath us split open. Together we stumbled toward the collapsing stairway, the light of orbital fire scorching everything behind us. The last thing I heard before the vox cut out entirely wasn't the pattern's voice. It was my own, calm, certain, witness, and then the world was consumed by fire. The fire should have ended everything. I'd seen orbital strikes before, their fury absolute, leaving nothing behind but glass and ash. But as I dragged Hale through the collapsing corridors, I realized something was wrong. The destruction wasn't spreading. It was hanging there frozen in place, like a mural of annihilation. Through a jagged tear in the ceiling above, I could see beams of white-hot energy descending from the Imperial fleet. Vast lances of light poised mid-strike. They weren't moving. Not slowly. Not at all. The fires that had consumed the hive city were frozen mid-roar, their flames sculpted into motionless shapes. A column of ash from a detonated spire hung in the air like a monument, every particle suspended, perfect and still. Even the thunderous rumble of the Earth's collapse had gone silent, cut off mid-echo. It was as if the entire world had been caught in a single breath. Hale whimpered beside me, his voice raw. Emperor's mercy, what is this? I didn't answer. I didn't know. I stumbled to the edge of a shattered balcony and looked down. The battlefield stretched below like a diorama of ruin. Frozen guardsmen stood mid-charge, their bodies locked in agonized poses. Vehicles hung above the ground, caught mid-explosion. A gunship hovered only meters above a tower, its engines roaring silently, motionless as if carved from stone. None of it was dead, none of it was alive. It simply was. The pattern had survived the strike. Somehow, impossibly, it had taken the destructive fury of the fleet and woven it into its design. Hale clutched my arm. Captain, we didn't destroy it, we fed it. No, I hissed. My chest heaved, my pulse hammering. We disrupted it. This is backlash. It can't hold this forever. But even as I said it, I felt the falseness of the words. The stillness wasn't weakness. It was control. The pattern had stopped time itself, suspending the moment of annihilation so it could shape the outcome. A deep hum reverberated through the air, vibrating my bones. The frozen flames around us flickered once, like a heartbeat, and then everything shifted. Figures moved within the stillness. They were not frozen like the other. They glided between suspended fragments of reality, weaving through frozen fire and ash, like wraiths. At first, I thought they were the 9, reborn yet again, but as they drew closer, I saw their forms were incomplete, half real, their outlines dissolving into spirals of smoke. Their faces were blank voids, holes cut into the shape of men. Hale backed away, trembling. They're outside of this. They're part of what's holding it, I realized. Anchors. The creatures turned their blank faces toward us, though they made no sound. The vox in my helmet crackled to life, filling with whispers, fragmented voices overlapping. I heard my own voice among them, Hale's voice, the voices of every man who died here. No escape. Witness. Witness. The nearest figure reached for me. Its hand passed through the air like smoke. But when it touched my pauldron, ice burned into my flesh. Images surged through me. Moments of my life played backward, forward, sideways. Battles I hadn't fought yet. Orders I hadn't given. Deaths I hadn't caused but would. It wasn't showing me visions. It was editing me. I tore free with a scream, my rifle rising on instinct. I fired, point blank. The bolt round tore through the figure, scattering its body into wisps of ash that reformed an instant later. Run, I bellowed, grabbing. We pushed through the frozen battlefield, weaving between motionless guardsmen and shattered spires. The creatures followed at a steady, measured pace, never rushing, never faltering. They didn't need to. The world itself bent to funnel us toward them, doors sealing behind us, pathways narrowing until only one route remained. As we ran, I realized the truth. The pattern hadn't simply survived the orbital strike. It had absorbed it, turning the destructive moment into a fixed point, a knot of time and energy. Everything was locked here, endlessly repeating beneath its will. The fleet above wasn't gone. It was paused, forever locked in the instant before fire could fall again. We reached the central plaza, where the hive's tallest spire had once stood. Now it was a jagged stump, its upper half suspended high above in midair, frozen like the rest. Beneath it, the spiral had reformed, brighter and more complex than before. Its light was no longer sickly green. It burned pure white, painful to look at, and its lines twisted in ways that hurt my mind to follow. Hale fell to his knees, clutching his head. I can hear them, he sobbed. All of them, every voice we thought we silenced. They're still here. I grabbed him by the shoulders, forcing his gaze to mine. Stay with me, Hale. You fight it. You fight. He blinked through tears. For a moment, I thought I'd reached him. Then his eyes rolled back, and his mouth opened in a perfect soundless scream. No. I hauled him upright, shaking him. Don't you give in. The light of the spiral surged, answering his scream. The frozen fragments of the battlefield shifted, turning slowly to face us. Entire spires rotated, suspended gunships, pivoting, motionless soldiers aligning into new terrible patterns. The world itself was becoming part of the ritual. Rythan's voice rose from everywhere at once, calm and exultant. You tried to destroy the pattern with fire. You thought annihilation meant victory, but fire is merely another shape. Suspended, it is perfect. It burns forever without consuming. It is eternal. Where are you? I shouted into the glowing chaos. Show yourself, coward. A ripple passed through the frozen flame. Rythan's form emerged from within one of the motionless firestorms, his body half-formed, spirals of ash, constantly tearing away and reforming. His eyes, or where his eyes should have been, blazed with white light. You cannot burn what was never alive, he intoned. This world is no longer a world. It is a single perfect moment. Hale stirred in my grip, his voice hollow. Captain, he's right. I can feel it. The fire isn't falling. It's waiting. I looked upward at the suspended fleet, realization dawning like a slow, sick horror. The fleet hadn't been halted. It had been integrated. The warships themselves were now part of the pattern, their weapons locked in a state of perpetual readiness. When the pattern spread, the entire fleet would fire at once, not on this world, but outward, burning other worlds in precise, endless succession. No, I breathed. I won't let that happen. I dropped Hale gently against a chunk of frozen rubble, and raised my rifle. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of what I faced. The pattern wasn't just in the city now. It wasn't even limited to this planet. It was in orbit, in the fleet, in the very moment of destruction itself. Rythan's voice came again, impossibly close. You cannot kill what does not move forward or back. You can only join it. The creatures closed in from every side, their blank faces reflecting the white glow. Hale's scream rose, merging with the chorus of the frozen world. I fired, knowing it would do nothing, but needing to defy it anyway. As the bolt left my weapon, I realized something terrible. If fire itself could be suspended, there was only one way to stop it.
I would have to break time itself. The air itself seemed to tremble, vibrating with an unnatural resonance that burrowed into my skull. The frozen flames around us pulsed faintly, like embers catching breath. Each pulse was slower than the last, yet stronger, and with every beat, the world felt less like a place, and more like a machine, the pattern asserting itself in ways beyond comprehension. Hale lay crumpled beside me, his breath shallow, his eyes fluttering open and shut. His voice was barely a whisper, raw and trembling. Captain, it's everywhere now, not just here. I can feel it reaching outward. Other worlds, other fleets. If it spreads, it won't. I snarled, more to myself than him. My chest heaved, my throat dry. I wanted to believe the words, but the sight above me told a different story. The Imperial fleet remained motionless in the sky, locked in that perfect tableau, its lances of fire hanging in eternal descent. One wrong move, and that suspended destruction would ignite, spreading across the Imperium like a plague of burning stars. Rythan's form drifted closer through the stillness, emerging from the pale white light, like a figure stepping out of a dream. He no longer looked like a tech priest, or even a man. His body was a spiraling column of fragments, constantly shifting and rearranging into symbols I couldn't fully comprehend. His voice, when it came, was not spoken but felt, reverberating through my bone. "You stand at the threshold, Captain Varos," he intoned, every word overlapping with echoes of itself. "One choice remains: accept the pattern, and you will witness the galaxy as it truly is, ordered, silent, whole." My grip on my rifle tightened until my knuckles ached. "And if I refuse?" Rythan's form pulsed, the surrounding flames rippling in response. "Then the pattern breaks, and all that is held here, fire, flesh, thought, will unravel. The moment will not end in silence, but chaos. You will burn." Behind him, the frozen figures stirred, fragments of soldiers and civilians caught mid-movement twitching, as though ready to resume their final motions. For a sickening heartbeat, I thought I saw myself among them, my own body locked mid-step, mouth open in a voiceless scream. Hale stirred weakly, his bloodied hand reached for me. "Captain, listen to me." His voice trembled, every word costing him precious strength. "You can't let it spread, even if it means all of us." The weight of his plea crashed over me like a tide. I turned, staring upward at the fleet. In my mind, I saw the pattern extending through those warships, then further still, across systems, sectors, entire crusades, a galaxy-wide network of perfect, silent obedience. No rebellion, no resistance, no life, just order. And yet, beneath that horror, another thought stirred. The pattern's voice whispered sweetly, like a memory of home: "You will never fail again. No more confusion, no more loss. Your men will obey. Your battles will be perfect. All suffering will end in unity." I wanted to scream, to drown out the temptation, but part of me wanted it. Part of me believed. Rythan moved closer, his spiraling form radiating a terrible calm. "You were never fighting me, Captain. You were fighting yourself. All your victories, all your defeats, they were merely shapes within the pattern. Accept this truth, and you will be free." I raised my weapon, aiming at the glowing spiral beneath his feet. My breath came fast and ragged. Freedom isn't silence. Hale's grip tightened on my wrist. His eyes, half clouded by pain, locked onto mine. "If you break it," he gasped, "you break everything. The fire, the fleet, us." His words drove the truth home. This wasn't just about this planet anymore. The orbital strike was suspended like a blade at the throat of reality itself. If I shattered the pattern, that blade would fall, not just here, but across every connected fragment of the galaxy. Worlds would burn, fleets would die. I saw it then, two futures, like twin paths, laid before me. In one, I joined the pattern, my voice merged with its chorus. The galaxy fell into perfect silence, every world united in frozen obedience. No more chaos, no more war, only stillness. My men's faces were peaceful, expressionless, their pain erased because they no longer were. In the other, I rejected it. The suspended moment would collapse. The fleet's fire would rain down without restraint, consuming not just this hive, not just this world, but everything connected through the pattern. Millions, perhaps billions, would die in a single instant of uncontrolled destruction. Either way, the Imperium would never be the same. Rythan extended a spiraling hand toward me. His voice was soft now, almost gentle. "Choose order, Captain. Choose silence. Become the ninth, and bear witness to perfection." Hale's fingers dug into my armor, weak but insistent. Choose freedom, he croaked, even if it kills us. The world around me shuddered, frozen flames trembled, ready to move. The fleet above flickered like a dying star. The pattern was collapsing under its own strain, demanding resolution. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear my own thought. The pattern's whisper was inside me now, weaving through my memories, my doubts, my guilt. It offered me what I had always wanted: control, the certainty of never leading men to meaningless deaths again, a galaxy without chaos, without failure. But Hale's voice cut through it, raw and human. Captain, please. I turned my gaze on Rythan. You call this perfection, I said, my voice low but steady. But it's just another form of death. He tilted his head. Death is chaos. Silence is order. I squeezed the trigger. The shot didn't strike Rythan. It struck the spiral at the chamber's heart. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then everything moved at once. The frozen fires roared back to life, detonations resuming mid-blast. The suspended fleet above unleashed its lances in a single catastrophic volley. The ground heaved, stone and steel tearing apart in an instant. The pattern screamed, not with words, but with the raw, shattering sound of something ancient being broken beyond repair. Rythan's form unraveled, his fragments spinning away into nothingness. The creatures dissolved into ash. The spirals beneath our feet collapsed, their light extinguished. Hale screamed as the shockwave hit us. His body ripped from my grasp. I lunged for him, fingers brushing his outstretched hand. Then he was gone, swallowed by fire and darkness. The last thing I heard before the world vanished was my own voice echoing back at me through the vox. Witness. Then there was nothing. There was no sound at first, only a crushing weight, as though the universe itself had drawn in a breath and refused to release it. Then slowly, sensation returned. Heat, pain, the taste of ash, coating my tongue like burnt metal. I opened my eyes to a sky that was no longer a sky. The once frozen fires had burned themselves out, leaving only blackened clouds swirling above a landscape scoured flat. The hive city was gone. The spires, the streets, the billions of lives, they had been erased so completely that only a faint, circular scar remained where the pattern had once been etched into the world. My armor was half melted, servos screaming in protest as I forced myself to sit up. Around me, jagged fragments of stone jutted from the earth, like the bones of some ancient leviathan. Steam rose from cracks in the ground, the last breath of a dying world. For a moment I thought I was alone. Then I heard it, a faint rasping cough. Hey. My voice broke as I crawled toward the sound. He lay among the debris, armor shattered, visor cracked, his body burned and broken but still alive, barely. His eyes fluttered open as I knelt beside him. You did it, he whispered, his voice so faint I had to lean close to hear. Tell me, it's over. I couldn't speak. The words lodged in my throat, because as I looked into the horizon, I saw the truth. The sky was not clear. Faint spirals of light still twisted above, like scars burned into the fabric of reality. They were smaller now, weaker, but unmistakable. The pattern wasn't gone. It had been wounded, shattered, but not destroyed. It's quieter, I said finally, but not over. Not yet. Hale's hand clutched weakly at my gauntlet. Then we failed. No, my voice hardened, though grief burned behind. We stopped it from spreading for now. That has to be enough. He tried to smile, but it twisted into a grimace of pain. I knew you'd make the hard choice. His breath rattled, faltered, then for a long time I sat beside him, staring at the lifeless sky, my mind a battlefield of memories. His words, his trust, his sacrifice, they were all pieces of a pattern of their own, a human one, fragile, imperfect, worth saving. The vox on my wrist crackled suddenly, startling. It was weak, fragmented, but unmistakably Imperial. A voice came through, distorted by distance and static. Ground forces, respond, status, orbital strike complete, awaiting confirmation. My throat closed around the reply. What was I supposed to say? That billions were gone, that the pattern might still linger beneath the ashes of this world, waiting to rise again. Instead, I forced my voice to steadiness. This is Captain Varus. Mission accomplished. The threat is contained. Understood. The vox replied after a long pause. Extraction inbound. Emperor protect. The channel went dead. I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the silence. Emperor protect. There was no protection here, only choices, each more terrible than the last. Slowly, I rose to my feet. My legs trembled beneath me, but I stood. I would not kneel, not to the pattern, not to silence. In the distance, faint shapes moved within the ash. Retrieval crews perhaps, or something else entirely. I couldn't be sure anymore. My mind still felt raw, as though the pattern's whispers were waiting just beneath the surface of my thought. I stared down at Hale's body, then at the horizon where the spirals shimmered faintly. The galaxy would never know what had happened here. To the Imperium, this would be a victory, a world purged, a problem solved. But I knew better. This wasn't an ending, it was a pause. I activated my helmet's recorder and began to speak, my voice low and steady, each word etched with the weight of everything we had endured. This is Captain Varus, last surviving officer of the Orphean Expeditionary Force. The pattern has been disrupted, but not destroyed. Evidence suggests it can reform, given time and silence. If this recording is found, know this: annihilation is not enough. Fire cannot cleanse what was never truly alive. I hesitated, my breath fogging in the cold air. Mark this world as quarantined. No settlement, no approach. If anyone comes here again, they risk becoming part of it. I ended the recording and locked the file under the highest encryption I had access to. The message would either be heeded or ignored. Like so many warnings before it, a deep rumble echoed beneath my feet. I froze, scanning the horizon for a heartbeat. I thought it was another quake. Then I realized it was something worse. A rhythm, a pulse, the same pulse I had felt beneath the spiral in the depths. It was faint, so faint, I could almost convince myself I'd imagined it, but I hadn't. The pattern was still alive, buried deep, waiting for someone to hear it. My fists clenched. There was no more time for mourning, no more hesitation. As the retrieval craft descended from the clouds, I turned my back on the horizon and began walking toward the landing zone. I didn't look back, but in the deepest, quietest part of my mind, a single word whispered with terrible patience: witness. And I knew this war was only beginning.